Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening to anybody watching in the world. This is something different from my channel. I've got the pleasure of interviewing Mr. Yowie Dan from the Blue Mountains, who has an amazing knowledge on the locations, in particular, of Aboriginal heritage in the Blue Mountains. And I've known Dan for a lot of years, and in fact, the first time I went camping with him was down to a place he took me to Martin's Pond, and where I set my tree up, my tent up was directly next to a tree with a big Aboriginal scar on it, and that had been removed, heavens knows how long ago, hundreds of years ago. And made into something useful. But I've named this video the Indiana Jones of the Blue Mountains, because Dan is well known for leaving the trail and going to some pretty remote areas within the Blue Mountains, and he's got a lot of knowledge, and he's the only one I know that's made an effort to go out and find these Aboriginal grinding grooves and rock carvings and paintings in the Blue Mountains and recorded on video. And Dan's just started a YouTube channel with all of his historical videos on it, and I've been having a bit of a binge on it the last couple of days. There's some really good content on there.
I've noticed that.
Yeah, but what particularly impressed me was his 4-part series on the Aboriginal art and rock carvings, etc. But anyway, I won't keep waffling on. Yeah, thanks for having a chat with me, Dan. I see I had to break your leg to get you to sit down for a while with me.
What, this one?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm off the I'm in the Yowie paddock at the moment, so be a couple of months until I'm back up. But unfortunately, accidents happened, and you just deal with it. So yeah, thanks very much, Dave, for having me on here and talking about this, because well, just recently, my sister told me that I've got indigenous blood in me. And this has probably been known by a year, but my sister just happened to tell me, and we're talking on the phone about something, and then she said, "Oh yeah, so my brother was in the hospital getting something done, and then he had to get a blood test, and it just happened to be a guy that was working with all the blood work at the hospital, and he'd been working with a long time." Doing the blood work for indigenous people.
The Blue Mountains. Oh, you're back, I think.
I'm back. So, okay, yeah, just the internet's been really bad here all day. So hopefully you can just cut all this stuff out. So anyway, I'll go back to where I was. And I'm not sure where he was in Australia doing all this, but he was doing the blood work for my brother, and he noticed a marker, an indigenous marker. So he contacted one of his friends who's I think an elder in that kind of area that we're in, and he just turned up, and the hospital said, "You got a visitor coming." So my brother says, "Oh, what, one of my family members?" He goes, "Nah, someone else." And he's like, "Oh, who's coming?" So this indigenous guy turned up and said, "Yeah, you got it in you. We found the marker." And so we know we've got heritage from someone from the Congo or Guinea that turned up here in the Third Fleet in, I think, 1830 something. So we knew that, but we didn't know about this. So this is something new. But I've always been interested in like looking for any kind of rock art or carvings, either Aboriginal, or just the early settlers, because they're just all interesting to me. That people left their names. People call it graffiti, but they just didn't. They did it a different way to people today. People today just get there and just spray paint, and they just put their name everywhere. Well, these other people, they were putting it at hard to find places, so it wasn't really on the trail all the time. So they wanted to leave their name there, so they went way up in some creek and just wanted to put their name. But it's not. There wasn't a lot of people when you're considering how many people have actually walked these trails in the Blue Mountains. So
What sort of year are we talking about, Dan? When were they? There's the Europeans.
yeah, Europeans. You're looking at well, look, after Blaxland Wentworth and Lawson went through there in 1813. William Cox actually built the road from Emu Plains in July, like I think it was like the 7th of July, started the road from Emu Plains and ended up in Bathurst, like just the start of January in 1815. So 6 or 7 months to build a road 12 foot wide and make it all the way up and down the mountains into Bathurst, like not just over the other side, but another 20 k's further. So once they did that, more and more people started going up, and then once the trains started happening in about 1860, it got a lot more people. So you're looking at people from the 1870s onwards to early 1900s, and then when it got to probably 1920s and 30s, it kind of stopped. You didn't see many people doing that, but then I've noticed, so there's some there from the early 70s and some from between like the late 50s, the early 70s. You see people's names in like 72 there and 85, and then it kind of stopped. So you don't see you don't see people carving their name in like they did it. They just get the charcoal and they'll write their name like, Bob loves Sarah or something like that, and then the whole cave overhang just gets covered with them. It's like the people, they put those locks on the bridge and then everyone else copies them, and there's a million locks on the bridge, and then they've got to cut them off because it's adding weight to the bridge and it could fall. So, I don't really like seeing it, the latest ones, but the older ones do intrigue me. And from about late 1870s it started.
Right. I suppose, I've seen videos recently where these charcoal initials and love hearts and all that sort of thing have actually been done over ochre, over the top of ochre art, Aboriginal art, and such a shame because on the video the curator or the ranger or whoever it was saying it's that to clean it up, to take the charcoal off, is a very difficult process to retain the images that are underneath it. And it's a real shame. Europeans have really left their mark everywhere, haven't they, since the 1870s, really?
Yeah, they have. And it's one thing about the Blue Mountains, like there is thousands and thousands of rock art and carvings, but most of them are in places where tourists will not go. They just go on the easy trails, and then mainly just hikers that live in the area or come in as tourists from Sydney. They just stick to the trails and they don't get noticed, or they can't get to them because they just, it's too hard to get to. But there's a lot of places that are well known, and some of them, like there's one, Ticehurst Park at Falconbridge, and it's basically you walk through a little laneway which is all grassy, and it's people know about it. It's well known, and it's got 3 emus there and a couple of grinding grooves, and then what they call mundos. I think that's how the pronunciation, and it's actually a carving of like a circular kind of U shape with a couple of toes. So there was about 3 mundos, which is a footprint, and it's there, and that was believed to be like the meeting place between the Darug and the Gundungurra tribe, and it was a special place for both of them where they actually met. And I think they would have had maybe corroborees or something like that there, or some sort of maybe just an area where if they had disputes, they would talk about them and fix all the problems between the tribes. So there's a few different tribes up there, and so it's an area where people can go to. But there's houses around there, and I've been finding, like, when you go to these places, there's that are right near the Great Western Highway, and there's houses around them. You go in and you visit it, and the people there are like guardians. They kind of watch what you're doing. So if you're trying to do something, they'll yell out to you, "Hey, what are you doing?" So yeah, you kind of got eyes on you all the time around them places because the people actually protect them, which is a good thing. So
Yeah, that is a good thing. I mean, the art around here, most of it's secret in the ACT. There are lots of sites. The one that's most accessible is a 7-kilometre round walk. It's called Yankee Hat Rock Art Site, which I suppose is a little bit politically incorrect because Yankee Hat was definitely a European name for the hill, and because it looked like a Yankees hat. But it's got kangaroos and dingoes and some abstract people on it. But my thought has always been, someone's going to turn up here one day and decide that they're going to do a Banksy on it or something, and make their name as a spray paint artist. And all that's between you and the artwork is a railing about waist height. But yeah, I mean, the Blue Mountains is a treasure trove made of Aboriginal heritage. I mean, I've got grinding grooves about a 10-minute drive from here, right on the edge of the suburb. But when you look at the Blue Mountain, it's like scar trees. There's quite a few scar trees around the area here, but most of them were knocked down when they built Canberra. They just bulldozed the bush.
Well, there's you talking about that fence that's waist high. Well, the Red Hens Cave in Glenbrook. So you go along the Red Hens Cave Trail, or you can drive there and park within about, I think, 200 or 300 meters, maybe 100 meters from the cave. They've had to put a massive big fence up, like a cage, and you've got holes in there where you can put your camera through and all that. But that's to stop people vandalizing, because they didn't have it there, and there was a couple of artifacts, and people actually grabbed them and took them. So So that's what's had to happen at some places like that one, and unfortunately, not everyone goes into these places with the with the mind of being respectful to them.
Yeah. So what's your process, mate, to find this stuff? I mean, you don't just wander through the bush and there's a there's a rock carving. Oh, that might happen to you. I don't know.
It has happened because I've been up so many ridges over the time, but mostly it's just look. A lot of them are on a YouTube. People have videoed. These are the ones that the national parks have got signage to. Like probably the best one that's in the Blue Mountains. That's easy to get to if you go to on King Tablelands Road, and I believe the road is something like Queen Street, I think it is. And your best bet is to park the car on King Tablelands Road and you walk down. It's probably a good, I'd say nearly a kilometre. So you walk down the road. It's good going down there because it's downhill, but when you're walking up, you've got to walk back up because there's no parking there. And actually, you can hike along that trail there, but no cars or bikes or anything can go in because that part of the track is actually private land. So you walk in there and you go up to the rocks on the right hand side, and there's like a cave there with some emu prints. There's some other things there, but I couldn't find them. I think they were a bit further around, and it was getting windy and starting. Rain looked like it was coming. Like the Blue Mountains, as always, rain comes out of nowhere. But you go up to the top to the plateau, and this was on one of my videos I made, and it's like grinding grooves everywhere, and they're really, some, how you get the grinding grooves? They look like they haven't been. Look, it's probably like the indigenous people that were doing it, the sharpened tools, didn't do it for too long, but these ones that were on this plateau, they actually go down like you can sharpen a knife in there. They actually go like that, but then they go down in a V shape inside. So they've actually been using it for a long time, and they're always next to like a natural hole in the rock where there's water, because they've got to put water there, because anything with friction gets too hot. So they've probably got to keep pushing water on there so it keeps it cool, and it helps to sharpen their tools. So that's probably the best one out of all of them that you can go to. There's no like carvings like what do you say, like animal or or people kind of carvings. There's only just the grinding grooves and the emu prints. But to go to places and to find them, mostly some of them have been people that have put blogs up on different pages. They say this is in just the area of Woodford, but they don't tell you where it is. Sometimes I can work out where they are through different people talking about them. One person will give you a bit of information, and someone will, and then you put all the pieces together like you're a detective, and you're kind of like, oh yeah, I know what that is. But I never will let anyone know where they are, just to if I put them on YouTube and then someone comes along and vandalizes it because they got the information through me, I wouldn't be happy with myself. So.
Oh, that's fair enough. That's very admirable, mate. And I agree. And I think that's why the sites around Canberra, I mean, I know I've seen the Trove article about two of the tribes, one from Monaro towards Cooma, and one from the Canberra mob here. I think they'll call them the Ngambri. And also the Yass mob, which was another mob. And they were all fighting at the time. And one of the early settlers made a report of it in the newspaper and mentions the battle that raged from where I lived, basically all the way through to the end of the ACT. And apparently there's caves along the way that they buried injured people, killed in it, that still had their spears and boomerangs and all that sort of thing.
Cool.
But it's probably the stuff's probably been removed and is in the National Museum. But either that or it's lying in situ and no one knows where it is. It's on private property, so the people that own the property will know where it is. And I suppose the last thing they want is a million people trampsing through their property to have a look at a cave, But anyway, my point was that these things were recorded. It's the same as the grinding grooves that are just up the road from me, and like you said, I always looked at them and thought, oh, these have been used in a process. Like some of them are bowl-shaped, some of them are that concave shape, some of them are quite deep and narrow, and I thought, well, maybe a spear takes a different groove to an axe head. You're back.
Sorry, mate. I've worked out when planes fly over, the internet just goes boom. There's been like 4 planes come over. As soon as I hear a plane, it just goes, see you later. We're on Wi-Fi, must scramble the message. It's always happened in this area. So, but getting back to just talking about when I find the rock art or carvings, especially the rock art with the ochre prints, there's really no specific kind of type of cave that they use. I think it just must be a special area for that person. They think that this is my special area. I'm going to put my handprint there, or my family or my tribe's prints there. And because I've been, like, you get up on the ridge and you think, oh, this is a great looking cave. Why didn't they put anything here? But you go to the Blue Mountains and there's thousands of caves that I just got nothing in them. And then you go to one and you think, why did they pick this one for? Why didn't they pick that one? And sometimes it might be just a little bit of a hole weathered on a rock, and I'll put a handprint in there. And it's only like this round, and there's a handprint in there. It doesn't have to be necessarily a massive cave. Yeah, there's a lot of ones where they're right next to waterfalls. All the big have grinding grooves around the waterfall. I know I went to Numantia Falls in Falconbridge, and it's a massive waterfall. It makes you look like a little ant when you take a photo against it. It's probably 50 meters high. And on the left-hand side, if you climb up, there's actually grinding grooves up there. So they're actually, using the water around the area to, sharpen tools. And I think all the different types of tools, the grinding grooves are for all different types of tools, for spears or maybe for just sharpening other things. So it depends what type of tool. If they got the spear, and that would have been,
for example,
axe heads and all that. So that would have been stone. They wouldn't have had any metals, and they would have been sharp. So that's what would have made that kind of really sharp V. So they were doing, sharpening stones in those grinding grooves. Yeah.
And the bowl-shaped ones I've got near me really look like they were grinding seeds or something on top of them, and over whoever knows how long they've worn a bowl into this rock. But I'll take some video of it when I can get up there.
Well, there was a guy, I think it was in Victoria, and he was talking about that, the Aboriginals were doing some sort of farming with certain kind of seeds that were here in Australia. They're still here, of course, but they were, planting them in an area so they would collect them and then make like a flour from the seeds.
Yeah, that's actually Bruce Pascoe, the guy that wrote Dark Emu.
Yeah, that's him. Yeah,
Tasmania. He got a large block of land. I don't know how many acres, but he grows kangaroo grass and then puts it out as a flour and sells it. But apparently, it's very nutritious. But I think by weight, a bag of normal flour is, $3, and a bag of his flour is $27. So,
okay.
But I suppose the high-end restaurants and things would like to put that on their menu. That's kangaroo grass bread or whatever.
Kangaroo grass with your kangaroo meat.
Yeah.
You could have all kangaroo.
Yeah, I'm surprised kangaroo isn't more popular than it is, but I suppose people have got the Australian icon stuck in their head. I've always found it to be a really nice meat, actually.
I've actually tried it once at the Easter show. It was a kangaroo hamburger. Yeah, I wasn't really impressed, but probably the way they prepared it probably was a bit bland. Maybe if you add a few things to it, spices or something, it might bring out the flavors better, but I only tried it once. Yeah.
Have you ever given any thought to how old these Aboriginal artifacts are? Because we got here in 1777. We didn't put any people here until 1788, and then it took them 30 years to get over the Blue Mountains. So you really, there's a time frame there of when they would have stopped traditional life.
It was 1770 when Cook come through here, because that's where the place up in Queensland was called 1770 when they had to fix the boat. So then by the time they got back here was 1788 with the convicts. So from 1770 when Cook arrived and didn't really, land until he had to fix the boat up at 1770, and then when they come back in 1788 with the convicts, so that's when basically the Europeans started here. But they think that the Red Hands Cave at Glenbrook is up to around 800 years old.
Yeah, I've heard that.
When you look at some of the other some like handprints that I've found and some other charcoal kind of stencils that are there, they're really, really weathered, and you could probably say they're 1,000 plus, because you look at the bushfires that come through they would destroy them. You'd have the new generation coming through after that and then redoing it again. So, it all depends how long the indigenous people have been here when they first come into Australia, and how long it took them to go from being up the top of Queensland and in Northern Territory, because the Kakadu, also it's Kakadu, I think it's the Katherine area. Back in, yeah, so I'm sure it's Katherine up in the top of Queensland and Western Australia. That yeah, I think Catherine's in Western Australia, Northern Territory. I don't know. It's up the top of Australia anyway, but it's the biggest area for the amount of Aboriginal artwork. So it's thousands of kilometres. Where
the Kimberleys.
Kimberley, yeah, the Kimberley's up in the top of Western Australia, isn't it?
Yeah,
I'm sure that's the Kimberley. Catherine's more over the Northern Territory. Kakadu's Queensland. That's right. There's so many places with K, and the Hawkesbury River, going from the mouth all the way in around Barowra and all them places, is the most concentrated area for rock carvings and paintings. More carvings, where you could go along to any plateau that's got like a small amount of dirt, which probably an inch or two thick, and get a broom and sweep it clean, and you'll see carvings. So that's one thing that's protecting them. It's the actual forests and the bush actually dropping all leaves and dirt sticks, and they're actually covering them to protect them. So that's the most concentrated area. The Blue Mountains I know someone that I've come in contact recently. We've been sharing information between each other, and he's got 2,000 PDF files that have got information of where different Aboriginal sites are. And that's just what they've found. So there could be 3,000, 4,000, could be up to 10,000 sites, because there's some places you just can't get into, like Burragarang. You can't get in all there because that's where the water is for Sydney. So there's a big, like, invisible line there. And if you go through there and you get busted and your name's not down there to say that I'm going to hike from this, because trails go through there. And if you come from do the Mittagong to a Katoomba walk, you can come through that way, but you've got to ring up the water board and say, hey, or Sydney Water, I think they're called, I'm going to come through, here's my name. And you can't stop. You can't go to the toilet. You can't camp there. You can't eat there. You just got to go from one gate to the other and make it through there before it gets dark so you can camp. Because if you get caught in there, you're in big trouble, big fines. So
yeah,
there's no one.
The same with our water supply up at Corran Dam. There's no camping, or there's no real access in there anyway. You'd have to bush bash it in there, but you're not allowed to camp.
Yeah, so there's no one searched them areas. Probably, for a good, how long's the water been there as a like the dam? You're probably looking at 100 years or so.
You're back.
Yeah, so there hasn't been many people going into these areas from, even from the 1800s, because they weren't able to get in there. So, that's one thing good, that a lot of these Aboriginal sites are way out of the way, so no one can go in there. So I try to find them as I'm doing my Yowie research or going on a hike, and I'll just say, that cave looks like it's all right. And sometimes it'll take 200 or 300 meters to get up there, and I'll spend half an hour climbing up, and it'll just be a cave with nothing. So, but then I usually just go along the ridgeline and just keep going as far as I can, till sometimes you just can't go any further because it just drops off and it's a sheer cliff. So then you just make your way back down to the trail. So that's sometimes I find them like that, and I'll just message to myself and write it down whereabouts it was, and then just keep going on my hike.
Yeah, fair enough. No, that's really good, mate. So do you think they should, they're protecting Red Hand's Cave, and that's a series of handprints that, it's hundreds of them, really, isn't there? And they're all different sizes, so obviously they're all done by individuals.
Yeah, some are really big, man. Like, the guy must have been like Andre the Giant, because I put my hand near one, it's like 3 times the size of my hand. So there was some big men in that tribe, but there's some weird. If you go and have a look at I've got a video on one of my on my channel, and it was kind of like a weird looking alien kind of heads Well, they maybe something. Like they called them the Wanjaners, I think, from Northern Territory. I don't know what the name is
Oh,
down
yeah, I
here.
know the things you're talking about.
Yeah, but they're just like a brown round head, and it doesn't have eyes, but they're all weird looking shapes. There's a couple of them there, and I never noticed them till I went there that day. And Daniel, who come out with me, he was going, look at these other weird things that are there with it. And only because he said it, I started picking it up. I'm like, oh, wow, there is. Maybe they're kind of their spiritual things, like I said, the Wanjaners. And yeah, so if you have a look at the video, I think we did talk about that, and I did zoom in on one by memory.
Right.
So yeah, yes, but I didn't notice it before, because you go there and you concentrate on the hands, and there's like little tiny hands, like little kids, maybe like a 3 years old, and then there's bigger ones from fully grown adults, and all through that area, from pretty much all the creeks leading off, where they're really hard to get. There's all different sites around the Glenbrook area, and even when you go to Euroka. So I'm gonna have to go back to Euroka, because we did camp there once after the Track Search for Australia's Bigfoot premiere, and we spent time there for a night. I think there was about 10 or 15 of us. I think you were there too, Dave. And the scar trees, I think they're there. I didn't really take any notice, but on this information that I received, there's some scar trees, I'm sure, that are in that.
Yeah,
So
no, you've just reminded me at the end of the road that I grew up in Canberra, in Pearce, was a cul-de-sac. And all my life since I was, because I think I moved there when I was 3, all my life, this big gum tree at the end of the cul-de-sac's always been there. And I never realised, we used to, nail pieces of timber into it to climb up and make tree houses and do all that sort of thing. And it's an old gnarly tree, and it's got, overgrown nails in it now from 50 years ago. And it's got a scar on it. And and all my life, this tree's been in my life, and up till I left home. And and it was just coincidence that it was a scar tree.
How big was it, Dave? You think would it be like because they did do these scar trees, they did them for shields, and they did make them for actually making like a cone shape kind of. Oh, we'll go back to well, they did cut them out to make a shape, and they tied it up and they put young children in it. It's like the little carriers we have today, and then they did make them to hold water in, and while the women were gathering like berries and stuff like that, they did use that as a carrying vessel as well. So there was a lot of different things. So how big is this scar? Is it small, or would it be like a shield type
I'd
size?
put it at just under a metre.
Well, that's pretty big, man.
In the traditional
kind of
shape.
Yeah.
And and of course, somebody many years ago drew a bullseye in the middle of it in red paint, and which is nearly faded off. But but nobody knew what it was. Nobody knew.
Yeah. Well, I've only come across 2, which is the one at Martin's Pond campsite. And you can see where people have put their axes into the trees. So there's all these cuts going down, and someone's actually cut a bit of it to maybe get kindling to start a fire, which is, not good to see. It wasn't there when we were there, I think 2017 or 2018, but it's happened lately, and a lot of people do camp there. So it's holding up considerably well, seeing how many people camp there and treat it the way they do. And then there's that one where right next to the highway, there's a Caltex petrol station right at the set of lights, and there's like the railway line there, and just up there where the road goes up maybe about another 150 meters, there's actually an area where the walkway goes off because the road, there's no way to have a walkway right next to the road. It goes around and over like a S shape, and it's a little bridge, and then it joins back on the road again next to the highway. And in there was actually some wells and a couple of grinding grooves and a scar tree, and I think it's called Gloria Park, and you got to go down there, and actually half that area was like just bulldozed away for the make the road. So there's only so much of it left, and it's in one of my videos, and it's right next to the highway. Like you can, look from the bridge and look down at it, and the highway's 5 meters, 8 meters away. So there's a lot of sites that were right on or in line of the highway, and they just got bulldozed and lost.
Most of the scar trees around here, I ran around about 10 years ago and took photos and video of them. They're on this channel, actually. But one of them I loved was in a schoolyard, and kids all called it the spook tree, and which could have been taken as being politically incorrect, but it was actually because when you sat at the bottom of it and looked up, it was really spooky. And scar tree, but one of the local tree lopping companies put it in for being chopped down with the ACT local government and got approved. And there was nothing wrong with this tree. It was just really old and gnarly, and they chopped it down. So there was a lot of embarrassment to be had,
Yeah, the governments, they should just say, all right, get someone to go out there, check it to see if it's got any kind of significant thing on it, like a scar tree or something, because before they actually chop them down, especially, being the older trees, like that one could have been, 400 or 500 years old.
Oh, easy, mate, easy.
Some of these trees, Dave, that you come across, especially I went down Springwood, and the other place down like in the Jamison Valley, and there's other place I've been to, but the trees are massive. Like the bottom of them, like you'd have to hold hands and go around them, maybe 6 or 7 people to go around the circumference of it. So them ones, you're looking at, some of these trees could be 800 to 1,000 years old, and they're massive. And I know a lot of trees don't get that age, depends where they are in the Blue Mountains, because if they're up on a ridge, there's always big trees falling down, because to go along the Federal Pass, which goes from down the bottom of Katoomba all the way up to like Mount Solitary, there's 3 trees that fell over, and they're not like really thick. They're really big, but they're like 70 meters long. You stand there. They've cut. There's 3 of them together. One's a bit smaller than the other 2, but 2 of them are really big, and they've just carved steps in them. So you just step over it. They're just too big to cut down. You'd stand on the top, and then you look to the right, and it's got to be at least 30 meters that way, and then you look to the other way, and it's got to be 40 meters to the top of it.
Wow.
And and they're massive, and they've just taken everything down with it. And how when you walk along them trails and you're down in the valley and everything's kind of dark because the light's not coming in, and then all of a sudden you just see it's all bright, and you're like, oh, what's going on here? Must be a landslide, or it's a tree come down. And at most time the tree's just got nothing to grip on. The rains come in and the dirt's shifted, so they just go down. And so these big trees that have got scar trees and they're 800 years old or 1,000 years old, they're like the one down where at Martin's Pond, that's really on the flat ground. Unless the landslide comes down, or a boulder, like a massive one from up the top of the ridge, which does happen, and then it hits it and knocks it over. That's the only reason why that one will go, or a bushfire comes through. But we're lucky that it's in there. It's right near the water, so it should survive a lot longer until it virtually dies away. But yeah, it's interesting to find these places in the Blue Mountains, not only just the European stuff, but all the Aboriginal sites that sometimes they really surprised me, and not expecting it. Next minute you just got a handprint there, or there's one I found. It's actually a charcoal print, and it's like of a thylacine or a dingo, because it's really kind of worn out, but you can see the front legs and the head, and then the top, and then the kind of where it goes to the tail, and that it's kind of not really defined. And it was on one of my videos that I was while I was searching for the Stratton's amphitheatre. So yeah, so it's interesting to find, mate, and not a lot of people don't understand, about scar trees and and the reason why they made them and stuff like that. So yeah, people don't really care about it actually, because it's not really what could I say, they just want to knock the tree down for whatever reason and don't understand the significance of the tree.
Yeah, well, it's our heritage, mate. It's our heritage.
It is.
Anyway, thank you for talking to me today, Dan. I think I've whet people's appetite if you're into Blue Mountains history or Aboriginal archaeology. And Dan has a website. I'll put a link below to it, and a YouTube channel called Blue Mountains History with Yowie Dan. It's got 10 or 12 videos on it at this stage that are all fascinating. And if you love the bush, these videos really show you the Blue Mountains, as in boots on the ground, and go to some pretty amazing heritage locations, both European and Aboriginal. So, yeah, no, thanks very much, Dan.
I've got a page full of places I want to find, so I'm not going to show anyone, but while I've been incapacitated, I've got 11 sites at the moment, and we're back.
Blue, yeah, you're back. Blue Mountain Geographical Encyclopedia.
So this has got 3,200 places, so it's pretty thick. So if you want to know where anything is, they do tell you where some places are. Some places they're a bit vague because they want to protect them, but this is like the Blue Mountains Bible, and I get a lot of information out of here, but it's really the indigenous, Aboriginal sites aren't in this, but yeah, that's where I go to find a bit of information to find my next my next places of the historical nature to find. So yeah.
Lovely. Well, thank you very much for joining me, Dan. This YouTube channel hasn't been used in a long time, but it is 12 years old, and I intend to post here anything that I come across with my video camera. Anyway, thanks, Dan, and I'll talk to you later.
Thanks for having me, Dave, and it's been great chatting with you today.
Thanks, mate. Bye.
See you, mate. Bye.